Playing Bigger, Playing Beautiful, the heart-centered way, where entrepreneurship meets spirituality, explores the intersection of personal fulfillment, spiritual growth, and business success. This podcast delves into the idea that entrepreneurship isn't just about profits or growing small to medium-sized businesses. It's also about embracing purpose, meaning, and inner growth. Each episode features conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and spiritual practitioners who share their journeys of building businesses that align with their highest values and deepest callings.
I'm your host, Debbie Zita, best-selling author, meditation guide, Australia's leading heart-centered success coach, creator of the 6 Selves model of self-inquiry, and founder of the Heart-Centered Way, dedicated to helping heart-centered humans cultivate more time, energy, money, and wisdom.
So I'm welcoming you, beautiful Court, and we haven't officially sort of started the podcast recording, although I have hit record because I felt to. And you asked me a question, which was, what was the intention? And I said, I have to hit record. I don't know what the intention is, but let me just tune in and find out what it is, which is, okay, I would love for, in this session, which we do in all sessions, is to connect with the listeners that need to hear this information the most. So whether they are coming through from a photo that they see on Insta, a viewer of me, or something in the wording, something in the description, or they're just like, what's this? But we want to call in the right people who are ready to hear whatever it is that we need to say for the betterment of every being. And so that listener listening can feel uplifted and joyful and heal something and feel inspired and loved. So I think that's a good intention. With that said, can you please let us know who you are and what it is that you do?
Wow. Okay. That's a big question. Who am I? Well, I think for the purposes of this podcast, what's important to share is that I work in human potential. So that's also a very big statement, which means essentially that I'm curious about how far we can go and how much we can liberate ourselves from ourselves. So my work centers all around that. I have 2 books out, a third one coming. They cover a lot of the science too, but in a really simplistic way. And the background of that was really me arriving at this place that everyone says they want to get to, this place of so-called success, right? And I had everything. I had the titles, I had the accolades, I had the academic background, whatever it was. I was married, I was a mother, I was a marathon runner, all the things. And I called it being miserably successful.
Wow.
So, I chased gold star after gold star, hoping that some externality was what was going to wake me up and free me from myself, as I was saying, and none of that was working. And so at a certain point, I had to get off of that, which is a drug of choice for a lot of quote unquote high performers. And I had to decide, what is it that I really want? And how can I, not what I really want necessarily materially, but how I want to feel and how I want to live in the sense of the legacy I want to leave behind and the lives I want to touch. And so I started on this whole quest. I mean, I was in corporate. I was a high profile executive in corporate. And I just was like, this isn't it. And then it was, this isn't it either. And this isn't it either, until it started to become more and more it. So that's a little background.
Oh, so beautiful. And I'm just thinking about, the different iterations of my business and my community and my life, and they're all very interconnected. And I feel like I'm in another iteration at the moment where I was telling a friend, and I say this with absolute love and respect, but I feel like I just have no room at all for BS. And I still have a very loving heart and I'm very forgiving and it's all about kindness and compassion. But I don't know if it's maybe my algorithm on Instagram, but I'm very plugged into the empowered kind of women's movement at the moment. But I just feel something within me that's just like, no time for BS. I want real, authentic conversations. Again, I mean no harm for any being, love and light to every being, genuinely. But I'm on a mission and I'm here to serve and I'm here to reach my own potential and keep opening my heart. So I love what you're sharing. And I just had this awareness as you were sharing that, this is it. And the word it is also in iteration. So it's just, it's a beautiful sharing. Can you can you go back, and I'm totally going off script, which we know that we were probably going to do that, but you remind me, or your story reminds me of Liz Gilbert, who I had the blessing of seeing last month actually in Melbourne, Australia, and actually having a photo and like sharing some space with her. She's just beautiful. But her Eat, Pray, Love book and movie was something that just my soul went on fire, and I kind of had to listen to that. And it was a 5 year, deliberation of, do I stay in the marriage? Do I stay in that space? Similar to you, but probably not as sexy. I don't have the corporate background. I'm not that physically agile with my marathon running. Walking is my thing, but like we had a home, we had, everything kind of in place. But what I was doing was I was living my mother's life to a T. And mum had transitioned when I was pregnant. And so I found very suddenly. And so I found myself just immersed in anger and rage when I'd realized that I was literally living someone else's experience of life. I was literally an extra in someone else's movie. And so a huge part of what I teach these days is how do we make you, the main character? And so I'm wondering for you, how, if you could go back to that point in time and share some words of wisdom or reveal some words of wisdom from that part of you, that time in your life, what might you say to those listening going, well, how do I do this reaching potential thing? What do you mean, Cord?
Wow, there's so much packed in there. And I want to take a moment to honor you for realizing that, it's funny when we feel like we're living someone else's life, and really it's kind of this almost deterministic DNA, sort of genetic imprinting, right? That we can either just go with and sort of step into a slow death, or we can have the audacity to break free from. And it sounds like that's what you've done. And probably a lot of your listeners are in that same determination of, there's got to be a better way. And so to answer your question of what an earlier version of me, what I would have told an earlier version of me, and what I would still tell myself so much of the time is relax and trust.
Yes.
Relax and trust. And I would just keep repeating that so that that part of my system that was always on overdrive for various reasons could settle enough that the trust piece could come through, because it's only when we relinquish those last bits of trust, the places where we're not trusting, that life can start to really take over. And it's a super curious phenomenon. I talk about it a lot in my book or in my talks around the world is, we're trusting virtually everything that's occurring both within us and outside of us. We have to for our survival. So, if you were going to bed at night wondering if the trillions of biochemical reactions occurring in your body every second were going to continue doing what they're doing, or if the planets were going to continue on their path, or the sun was going to continue to come up, and if you were questioning that every single night, you'd go crazy, right? But we do this with this tiny percent that's left over, right? We say the relationship has to go this way, otherwise I can't be okay. And this is all in all of our greatest teachings, talking about clinging or resisting, right? And so essentially the game is giving it up, right? It's like, how much can you just give up and die to be reborn over and over? And like I said, sounds like that's what you've done.
Yes. And as the years have moved past, it used to be for the betterment of every being and everyone else around me. And that was due to my own trauma and abuse. And I've come into a place the last 6 months where I've realized, oh, that includes me. And I'm wonderful and I'm amazing. And so now when I'm guiding meditations, I say, including all parts of me, including all parts of you. Because what I was noticing, particularly with women in this kind of space, there is a level of trauma or abuse, whatever that means for you. And obviously we're on a podcast, so please delve more deeply with a therapist and a licensed practitioner in a one-to-one setting where you can unpack all of that. But often when we're in that space, we give so much. And I feel the reason is because we're trying to save a past little version of us. And so we often project onto the situation that little girl who needs saving. And we can't save her because she lives in the past and she also lives within us. But what we can do is offer love and compassion in that moment, and then hopefully come into present so that we're not projecting anymore what's happening in this present moment. We're purely present to this person and this situation. And that's a game changer. when you're no
Mhm.
longer projecting your insecurities, your fears, and your traumas onto the current situation, but you're just here with your full presence. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just felt to share that. There wasn't a question necessarily in that. Um, but unless you want to add to it, please let me know.
Well, I love it. And what you're talking about is getting to that place of witness consciousness, essentially. Again, from all our greatest wisdom traditions, they talk about this in some form or another, right? Which is that place where you can be in peaceful observance and acceptance. And I wouldn't even say acceptance, but again, that trusting, relaxing into the moment, like, wow, this is what the moment's giving me right now, which might be someone. I remember months and months ago, someone just swerved around on the street and they were honking and I think I was even crossing the street and I think they even honked at me and it was one of those situations where I just laughed, right? But a previous version of me would have been like, "What's that about?" And gotten up in our, it was just like, "Oh,
Yes.
that's so interesting. Look at what life is doing now. I mean, I have no explanation for that whatsoever. It's just funny." And and so it sounds like what you're talking about is really that state of just saying, but it also sounds like that I'm observing, but it also sounds something else really important in there, which I think for the listeners is, especially if they're on that same track of shedding a lot of trauma from their past, which you're definitely right, a lot of us have, is that point where you start to realize that your relationship with yourself and the intelligence coursing within you is the most important relationship you have. It
Yeah,
supersedes every other relationship. And until that awareness comes, it's always about the programming of giving, 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 especially for women. It's the program of, you have to you have to be self-sacrificial, all these kinds of things. And so for me, it was funny. Recently, I had something occur, and I realized, well, in the past, I was trying to complete a cycle with a human, and with a fellow human, and the whole time I kept thinking this is about the relationship and preserving the relationship, and this is about, leaving in total integrity with that. And then at a certain point, I realized, no, this is about relationship with yourself. This is about leaving in integrity with yourself. This is about a clean heart for yourself, feeling that your heart is clean, your heart is clear. And regardless of what's happening around, or regardless of how other elements might interact with that, you have that peace of mind that you have been honoring yourself. And that is not selfish, that is not unkind, that is really the ultimate kindness, because it's also a modeling of what's possible for other people.
absolutely. It's such a beautiful sharing. And, it makes me think back to some of those times in my previous life, in this incarnation, where I was around people who just didn't see me. And the funny thing
Mhm.
was, though, it was because I didn't see myself. So that would show up as not feeling as if I belong, feeling misunderstood, feeling anxious and overwhelmed. And you actually do, as much as I resisted this, need some time in isolation to practice witnessing yourself, to practice loving yourself, to be okay to sit with those different parts of yourself. And everyone's journey is different. For some people, maybe that's a day. Maybe it's 4 days or a week on a retreat somewhere. Maybe it's in ceremony. For me, it was, I had relationships certainly in there, but it was a good part of a decade where I was really learning about the heart, the spiritual heart, and wanting to satisfy that seeker part of myself that knew that there was something more than just this 3D reality. When everyone else told me, no, no, what are you doing? Just get a job, stay married, marry someone else, get a different job. What are you doing? And I would do that. And then I would become physically sick, or I would go into a clinical depression. So eventually I went, all right, time to be on my own. And then that's where you really, I guess, you face your shadows. You face the fear of loneliness. You face the inner critic. You face the fear of the gap. You face other people's fears and their projections onto you, which if you're an empath, and I certainly am, you can feel all those things as well. But then, and you mentioned this word before, then eventually at some point, again, everyone is different. There is liberation because you're freeing yourself from that self that you are not and finally meeting what I call the source self, the self that you truly are. I know often we talk about true self, and I was blessed enough to do a retreat with thousands of hours and many years of practicing to get to that kind of level, and I felt very accomplished spiritually speaking, whatever that even means, right? In that kind of non-egoic sort of way. And I got to access my true self-consciousness. And what I love to do now is help women to map back that self, which is self beyond form. It's pure light form, love and light, which we all are beyond everything else, regardless of our beliefs. It's just the reality of life by design. That is who we are. But then mapping that back to this that we see here and how we wear our hair and the makeup that we choose and the branding that we have and the way that we speak and the topics that we teach and all the things that bring you into this space. But it's from that big grand space back to something practical here and now. So what was my shit? I think there's no questions. I don't have questions for you, Court. I just feel like I'm having the most soulful, heartfelt conversation and just being witnessed by you. So I'm just so grateful to be in your space. But yes, I just felt to share that, and I would love to hear, what has that reminded you of, or what does that raise for you?
Well, I love source self. And we've actually, with two other women, we're starting a mastermind, and we're launching it at the beginning of the fall. So I think around September. And we are always talking about this piece, right? Of how to stay connected with that piece in the human messiness, in the day to day, in the, oh, how does my hair look, where we get really distracted by those kinds of things, right? And it's like, oh, that seeking of the truth within us, which is what you were talking about at the very beginning. I also am the same. I like to say I have a truth detector in me, because I detect the slightest bit of BS, and I'm out, And I think the more you sort of live in that connected frequency of, like, it's the power that is beating our hearts. It's the power that is conducting all that is, right? And then the more you sort of groove with it, that you decide you're going to dance with it, and you allow it to begin taking over. Like, I pray constantly for that source energy to take over my life, because I wish to lead from that place. I wish for the human side of things to really be in service to it, versus the other way around. It's not about what it can do for me. It's about, how does it want to use me? And I set this intention before I go out on stage. I set this intention before I go into a podcast. I set this intention before I write a book. And I think it's really, really important for us to say, yeah, we get to have this human experience and enjoy all the sensations and enjoy all the physical. And it's really when we lend ourselves completely, it's almost like a lover, giving herself completely to her partner, is like the minute you sort of just say, I give myself to you, and you start to let it take over. That's, I think, the place where the humanness it starts to be less tangled and more enjoyable, if that makes sense. Like, less convoluted, less kind of struggling, and more, oh wow, this, I get to experience this. I have nights where I can't get to sleep because I'm so excited about what I'm going to get to do the next day. And it'll be the most mundane stuff. It'll be like, oh my God, I can't wait to make my little mocha pot. I can't wait to do that. I can't go to sleep. I'm like a little kid. It's like, oh my God, I get to make a mocha pot right when I wake up. And then I get to write some stuff. And then I get to go on a walk with a friend. Like, I don't even know. Every day it changes. But it's really living, giving yourself, like I said, really giving yourself like the moth to the flame.
Yeah, whew, yes, I'm feeling that. I got tears in my eyes, and what I'm realizing is what a blessing to be able to experience that while we have these bodies. It's yeah, to be able to, whether that was through meditation or through practices of surrender or divine intervention, of however it was that you came to understand that part of you, and me for myself, and anyone listening who wants that but doesn't yet have that, to know that that invitation is for every being. It's not just for Court and Deb, or it's not just for women in first world countries, or it's not whatever it is that you want to insert there. That place is literally for every being. And in fact, what I've seen, and I think you probably agree with me, Court, having traveled a little bit, is that often in countries where there is less, there's actually more of that source energy. So, and then there's, and I want to ask you about this actually, then there's the programming or the interpretation of, oh, okay, so let's go and live in a third world country because that's where it is. And it's like, I personally have done that for a short time. And here's what happened. I felt the bliss and the transcendence. And I actually was jokingly asking my roommate, have we transitioned? Because we hadn't washed our clothes. We missed the laundry truck. I hadn't washed my hair. And it's not that I'm a princess, although I kind of am, but I have a lot of hair. And so if you don't wash this hair and you're sweating, right, it smells pretty badly, right? So I hadn't washed my hair. I hadn't really eaten very much. There was insects and things everywhere, but yet I felt very transcendent, right? On the
Mhm.
other hand, I don't know for me personally and the life that I want to create while I'm here, and my son is in Melbourne, Australia, and all sorts of other things. I don't want to go and live on an ashram. I want to do school drop off. I want to be here. So it's, how do you kind of again bring all those things back into a space where you're really feeling that and you're living your life from that place? And where I was going was how grateful I am that I've had those experiences, that I followed my heart to seek and to ask and to look behind the curtain, if you like, and then get to bring that into my day and wake up. I get excited about my coffee. I have specialty coffee at home. I bought a coffee machine with my own money that I earned in my own business with IP. That's my like I just feel so grateful that I get to have this physical thing in my hand, and I use it as an act of devotion every morning. And then sometimes I'm awake at night, so excited to wake up to have my coffee in the morning. So I understand what you're saying. Um, I guess I want to find out, for anyone who feels like it is for the special ones, or it's not really for us. And I was talking before about, the third world countries and different places with source energy. But I feel wherever you live, you can bring that in. You don't have to give away your belongings. You don't have to move into a place of whether that's poverty or scarcity or just minimalistic living, not unless that's your truth. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you, I guess, if you're happy to share around sort of money and, understanding source self and that place of the heart and the soul, whatever language others want to use is perfectly fine. But then mapping that back to having a nice life materially as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, there's so much packed in there. So before I go into wealth, which I love talking about, and I just did a whole podcast on this, uh, before I go into that, I want to say the coffee thing. So when I said my mocha, that's my
Yes,
mocha pot from Italy.
yes, yes,
So I
yes.
lived in Italy for 23 years, and it's the same for me. It's very ritualistic. It's like, oh, I get to make my little mocha pot, and everything involved in that process of cleaning it and putting the water in and putting the coffee and hearing the sounds and smelling the aroma. And oh, so yeah, we're yeah, we're loving the coffee factor, and I just want to say, like, wow, that's great because I haven't actually heard anyone talk about their coffee that way before, other side from me. That's wonderful. So the wealth piece, well, you really hit on it, and it's one word. So, who was it? Sir John Templeton, who is arguably one of the greatest investors, if not the greatest investor of all time, when he was asked the secret of wealth. And I'm certain that he was talking about wealth in a very expansive sense, not just financial well-being. He summed it up in one word, and the one word was gratitude. That gratitude that you get to wake up and make the coffee, that gratitude that you get to do it with the money that you generated through your business, that gratitude that people are listening, the gratitude that people care what you have to say, the gratitude that you get to show up every day and do something you love instead of something you hate, the gratitude that the sun keeps coming up and the moon shining on the other side in the morning, and the gratitude that you get to see this phenomenon at a different time than the other half of the world, right? The gratitude that we get to be here right now sharing and talking. I mean, it's infinite. There is nothing that confines it. And when you settle into that place, that is one of the greatest secrets of wealth. That's actually, I think I'm not quite sure about the order, but I put Five Secrets of Wealth in the book Give Yourself Permission, which is my second book, and that's one of them. And it's arguably the most important. I think Sir John Templeton was really onto something. So it's when you can really seep yourself in that as much as you can, it's not just that the financial rewards will come, but the life rewards come and the sense of, you know what, I do have it all. And you have it all no matter where you are. And that's actually the greatest illusion that we have. And it's one of the reasons why you do see this disparity in countries where people have so much and materially, and countries where people don't have as much, is because I like to think of the material as a distraction. It could be a fun distraction. It can be an amusing distraction. It can be a distraction that you love to enjoy. I mean, I love me some, I love it. I love it all. And I also know I can let it go. And there's this great story, if you want, I'll share. There's this story of there's a story of a mendicant, a wandering mendicant, and he's going through, I think, India. I don't remember the specifics of it, but he's walking around and this man runs up to him and he says, "Give me the stone. Give me the stone." And the wanderer, the mystic goes into his bag and well, he says, "The stone, the stone." He said, "The stone that's in your bag." So he goes into his bag and he pulls out the biggest diamond ever. And the man says, "Give me that stone. Can I have that stone? I had a vision last night. God appeared to me and said that if you gave me that stone, I'd be the richest man in the world." And it was the largest diamond in the world. And so the wanderer says, "Of course, here, take the stone." And the man runs away with the stone and he runs and he runs. And at a certain point, he sits down under a tree and he stops. And then he calmly makes his way back to the mystic and says, "Here, take the stone back. Can you give me the riches that made it possible for you to give that away so easily?"
Mm.
The riches are in you, and that's another secret of wealth. Every richness you could possibly imagine, you could possibly desire, you could possibly dream of, it is all inside, and that's the last place we want to look. It's like Dorothy with the red slippers.
Yeah.
Come home, come home, come home. And every time you get distracted, come back home, come back home. That's what the prodigal son was about. That's what, it's just come back home. You're welcome anytime. You are welcome to revel in the magic and the mystery and the magnitude of who you are in any given moment. You just have to time yourself out from the distractions for a sec. It's not easy. I mean, trillions of dollars are spent annually for you to stay distracted.
That's right.
Trillions of dollars. Companies spend that money for what? The most precious resource in the world. What is that? Your attention.
Yeah.
Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. That's your freedom.
Mm. Wow. Thank you, Court. Yeah, take a moment for myself and for the listeners to process everything that you just shared in that. And it's why we can witness people who have very little but have so much, and those who have so much but also very little. And I think to me the success is, for me it's both. I want to have a wildly successful life in the 3D realm so I can have my beautiful coffees and have my acts of devotion that connect me to source energy, and then show other women how to also do that. And I also, I've lost 6 very close people to me, 4 friends, and 2 family members. Well, 3 friends and one was a very challenging karmic relationship, but 6 people very, very close to me. And when mum passed away, sorry, this is slightly morbid, but I'm going to share it. Her dad was a jeweler and they went through the war. So mum was a hoarder that's just how it showed up for her. And so she had, when she transitioned, she had 15 rings on her fingers. And at one point we had to cut off, actually it was her engagement ring, because we couldn't get them off her fingers. We had to cut them in her transition. And I was 27 and pregnant, didn't know all that much really. I wasn't very worldly, very kind of just cotton wool, kind of upbringing, because mum was trying to shield me from the world. And I understand now in my 40s what she was doing. But I also don't know that mum realized how strong I was, or perhaps I didn't know. But I learned then that this stuff is just stuff. You cannot take it with you. It doesn't have the meaning that it has when you're here. But where I'm at now in my 40s it's for me, it's lovely to have it, to honor the women that have been, to adorn my beautiful body that is a gift from the creator, that is an expression of my heart and my soul, because it brings me joy to do that. So it's, I guess it's finding that sweet spot that it is for each person. If it is a minimalistic lifestyle and that brings you peace and joy, please do that. Please, give away your belongings. If it's acquiring things for certain chapters and times of your life because they represent and express a part of you, please express that part of you authentically and don't give two hoots what anyone else thinks. And if you love to have lots and lots of things because maybe you You hoard because then you give away to charity at some point in time because that's what you do. Or you have a healing moment where you go to a therapist and find out, why am I hoarding and how can I make this a bit more healthy? Whatever it is for you, that is beautiful because that's the journey that your soul and your heart has chosen. So yeah, thank you for reminding us, Court, of these beautiful expressions and connections. And you had me teary, and I haven't checked my mascara, but I assume it's fine. Apologies for any YouTube
You look great.
watchers. But I couldn't stop my tears when you were talking about gratitude. And often because I facilitate hundreds of sessions every year, I feel it come through as a guide and as an instrument of love, but it's also so beautiful for me to sit across and witness someone who's in that frequency, which you clearly are, and be able to receive the words that you were talking about with gratitude. And I could feel every word that you were talking about, and how beautiful that we have eyes that we can see, that we have mouths that we can speak with, that we have a brain to comprehend information and express with. It's so endless. So if anyone is listening and you might feel like you're in a funk, like you're in an overwhelm or a panic or a depression, one of the tools that I use to come back home, as you were just talking about before, is gratitude. When I was going through my divorce and mum had passed away and challenges with my son, and just, it was hard. I would sit at home and I would just look around going, I can see, I'm grateful. I have a roof over my head, I'm grateful. My son is right here, he's okay, I'm grateful. I am jealous and terrified because my life is crap. I'm grateful for that I even know that I feel that way. So just gratitude, 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 gratitude. And also, this too shall pass. It always does. And the other thing that I love to say, and I haven't said this for a while, but and I don't know who said it, but I want to live the length and the width of my life. So I don't know if you know that one, or if you know who said that, but that's something that I used to say a lot and just felt to share now. Court, can you please share with us, because you have amazing books and talks and workshops and all sorts of things that you deliver all around the world. I would love to find out, can you share with the listeners, what are you working on at the moment? How can we get involved? What does it look like?
So I'm working on book number 3, and actually I'm working on 2 books simultaneously. So I'm working on another nonfiction, and I'm working on a fiction book. And this nonfiction is actually around lessons in freedom and freeing yourself from the kind of the confines that we put ourselves in. So I'm really excited. All of my books have been about that in one form or another, but I'm excited about this one. And so that's one of the pieces in the work. I'm going to be giving the first public talk that I've given in a long time, because I give a lot of private talks for everything from companies to universities, to given talks on places like Richard Branson's island, Necker Island. So I tend to give talks that are reserved for people who, yeah, it's private, right? Private talks. And I'm really, really excited because I'm giving the first public talk that I've given in a while this May. And so people can find more information about that on LinkedIn or other places while tickets are still available. So very excited about that. I'm also starting to interact with people through a mastermind, because I have a 3-year waiting list for one-on-one work with me. So I can't take on I'm not taking on any other clients directly. But what's nice about the mastermind is I actually do get to work directly with a lot of people. So they'll get access to those trainings and direct lives with me, and be on the same sort of circuit of people. And I'm doing that with 2 other really, really phenomenal women. So excited about that too. That's starting this fall, but there's like a lead in, and people can join online we have weekly calls and stuff like that. So all of that information is available through my social media and stuff like that. So my social media, it's Cortney, and my name is spelled Cortney. So there's an O. There's only an O in Cortney, and so Cortney McDermott. And then there you can find me. You can connect with me. I have a team, but they actually send me if there's any direct messages, or we get testimonials all the time about the book or the talks. So they share all of those directly with me. I love reading them and the impact that this work has had on people's lives. So I do connect in some form. I do connect through those platforms. I stay off as much as I can, but I like when people are sharing what's moving them in their lives. So I do, yeah, have that. And yeah, I have so many podcasts and so many interviews on radio and TV. We were just looking at it, and it looks like I've done 350 over the
Wow.
last close to 2 years. So there's lots and lots of content that can be consumed out there. If you enjoyed this, there's lots more.
Oh, so amazing. Court, is it okay if we add in the show notes some of those links? I'm sure we
Please.
can do that, so I'll make sure that we do. And your team is so lovely from the moment that we interacted. And I have to do a shout out to Karen Walker Cone, who was the person who introduced us indirectly through her summit. So very grateful for her and for meeting you and interacting with you. And yeah, oh, can I ask you, I have one other question that I do ask all of my guests, which is I created a model of self-inquiry a number of years ago, and I always ask my guest if they wouldn't mind to share which one of the selves is their favorite and why. So I can share my screen.
Okay.
Take your time to have a look at the different sort of concepts, but is it okay if we do that?
Absolutely. And before we do, I also want to thank Karen and I want to thank you. When we connected, it was like lion to lion. We have you said when you saw me, you took a double take and almost thought it was you with the hair because we have this lion hair and it's not lioness, it's lion hair. So it's been so great connecting with you, so great connecting with your audience. Whoever's listening to this, my God, you're phenomenal. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I want to say that before. And I'm happy to look and tell you
Thank you
what
so
I
much,
think.
Paula. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. And perhaps we don't. Let me just get it back on this. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. Let me just move this across a second.
I'm also trying to make it bigger. There we go. Okay, the spiritual
Yeah.
self. Okay.
That.
Mm. Wow. I mean, if I had to choose one of them, it would be the spiritual self.
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Can you share with us what is it about the spiritual self that feels like it's your first choice?
Ever since I was a kid, I was asking myself those existential questions. Who am I is a very important question for me. I really do endeavor to move beyond the masks, the personality. We use that word. We say I'm this kind of person or that kind of person, and that stems from persona, which were the masks they wore in ancient Greek theater. So that's the origin of that word. And so I really do strive to see beyond that in myself and others, recognizing, as Shakespeare so eloquently put it, that the whole world is a stage and really connecting to that core intelligence that I was talking about earlier is my of paramount importance to me. It's my priority in life.
Yeah, so beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One lucky last question before we head off. If you had any words of wisdom to share with someone listening who is looking to, remove that mask and access their core self, their spiritual self, what might you say to them?
Yeah, I would harken back to the sharing earlier, which is relax and trust.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to do. I remember too when people would say relax years ago when I very clearly wasn't relaxed and I would say I am relaxed, right? But I know from my research and from my personal experience and from the messages that I get that relaxing is the way in.
Mm.
And I counsel people all the time. I say, just go lay down for 5 minutes. And lots of times people will say, well, I don't have 5 minutes to lay down. And then I borrow from the Dalai Lama when he was talking about meditation. And I say, if you think you don't have 5 minutes, please take an hour.
Absolutely.
And the relaxing is actually what's going to allow you to trust more and more and open up to all those new beautiful and potentials that are in you. And I don't make promises lightly, but that is one.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautifully spoken. And it's been such a pleasure to spend this time and space with you to share your heart, your soul, your wisdom. You feel like such a sister to me. You really do. The hair, the coffee, they're questioning why we hear from a young age. My first experience was 3 in kindergarten, saying, "Why am I back here? What is this?" So,
Exactly. My mom used to introduce her 5 of us kids growing up in 6.5 years. We were born within 6.5 years, and my mom used to introduce us and say, "This one's going on 5, this one's going on 3," and she'd point to me and she'd say, "This one's going on 70." I was always just like, "What is this? Why do we have to do this again?" I'm with you.
I'm hoping, I'm going to set the intention that one day we can share physical space and I can give you a
Yes.
hug, because
Yes.
I would love
I
to.
should be coming to Australia and New Zealand soon to be giving some talks. I'm
Oh,
in negotiations about that right now. So
please
definitely
keep us posted.
100%. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It was such a pleasure.
If you resonate with what we're about and you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to us, please leave a review and share the episode with someone who you believe could benefit from what has been discussed. Thank you so much for your support. See you soon. The information provided on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, health, or financial advice. Always consult with a qualified health professional or financial advisor before making any decisions related to your personal health or finances.